And Anton there, I assume that's Tony. Still connecting to your audio though. Speaker. Okay. Don't know why. You'd assume you do speaker, then we would be the main view. Not sure. So, homework last week was to watch that movie. Did everyone get to watch it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Tony, did you get to watch it?
I watched talking about Yoga Nanda.
Yeah.
I watched the mini documentary, so I've got a bit of a snapshot on it. So I'm on the same page.
Mel, I don't know, did you get to watch it? No, because you...
No, I ended up, because I had the dentist and then I was going to count them.
Yeah. You're in the group though, aren't you? You're in the Saturday group as well? Or are you not on...
I don't know if I'm on the group.
Chat?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I better add you there. You might not be in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I put the link there to the movie with the Spanish subtitles.
Okay.
There he is, ciao.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, is this?
Yeah, that's your spot,
great.
man.
Thank you.
So, Alex,
Yeah, great.
have you met everyone here before? Probably not.
No.
Some of you know Alex, some of you don't, yeah?
Yes, I know. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe a quick round,
Yeah.
introductions.
Okay, Alex, I'm Mel.
Nice to meet you.
I'm one of the cat people.
That's great. Great to meet you.
Nice to meet
You guys wouldn't have met either, no?
No.
Because you guys are just Saturday, yeah?
you.
No.
Sam.
Nice to meet you. It's Ruben. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Sorry.
Renata.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. Alicia.
Aurélie.
What's your name again?
Aurélie.
Ori. French?
Yes.
We are
How are you?
neighbors.
Sí.
Ira. Ira.
Ira. Nice.
Shakira.
Shakira. Okay, I will link with that.
Is it short enough for
No, I just Ira.
that's it, yeah?
It means earth in Sanskrit. So like it's Panchamama, goddess of earth.
Beautiful. Oh. Nice. And then Bruce, Alex, sorry. I might have to get used to that. We've got a few friends online as well. So we've got...
Hey guys, how are you?
Ciao.
Nice, you got like the television here. Television. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, just so you guys know how it looks.
It's professional.
Yeah.
You know, you guys are there too, so. So we kind of have you in the room. A little bit flat, a little bit 2D. So anyone want to share anything about that movie? What stood out for you? What was it about for you? What happened?
I think the people who did share did such a wonderful job summarizing it. And was it the people doing Fridays and Saturdays who were asked to do that?
I didn't ask you guys to do it. That was something Amy asked.
Yeah, it was impressive, and so we got a lot out of that. Obviously, watching the movie itself, and just for me, he popularized yoga in the West, and to see where yoga's at now, like that's a massive achievement. And yeah, obviously there's so much more, but he's the reason why essentially we're all here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, good point. He's not the only one who came from India to the West. But he was one of the pioneers. Yeah, definitely one of the pioneers. Yeah. Anyone else get any insights out of that?
Yeah. I love the way, I mentioned a few of these things in the video, but I love the way he united all religions. And it was just teaching religion as love. Yeah, that was beautiful, beautiful teaching. And how meditation is the doorway or the path to connecting to God, to love. Yeah, I love that. And just the impact he made on America in the 20s, like, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. Yeah.
He had the evangelists doing yoga, basically, and he was on the FBI wanted list.
That's right.
And the reason they stopped him, probably we haven't got mainstream yoga today, is they actually try to stop it then in its tracks, like as far as mainstream media goes. So that's why I'm thinking, because he had 30 million people doing yoga, I think then. If it's today, I could say that's close to 10% of the population, but 30 million in 1920 or 30 would have been almost the whole population. So that's what, with foresight, going back to what you're saying, is to intertwine religion, so there was a vision there. That needs probably to be carried on today. So it's almost 100 years. So if you think an evolutionary process, yeah, so that's what I got out of it, and I didn't even watch the movie. I'm probably going to say that.
Good on Tony. Any other insights? Or
Well, I have to say that I saw the documentary twice, because the first time it was like just seeing the documentary as a movie, and then when I saw it the second time, I noticed, well, I'm a filmmaker, so I know what is the process of the editing and all of that. And of course, I think that also put that person in a box and say, this person is successful because he's been able to deliver the message in the West, especially in America. I felt it was like a little bit kind of, all right, you are successful, you made the achievement because you went to America, and then, because America is kind of, this, it's on the pedestal, kind of, So I see things also in a retrospective, and I try to see it.
do you mind shutting the door outside, the main door? Thanks, Lydia. I think you're the last one.
Yeah, to see it not just, with a positive attitude, but also with, all the sides that, So I can say that Yogananda as well, like Osho, they went through their own personal and probably challenges, building up that type of institute, because it's an institution, when you build such a big thing, it's like you actually building a business, you're building an institution which is challenged by the government, it's challenged by people that are coming and joining the organization. So there are many aspects, I feel, not just the fact of the.
No, you're so right, and I think he admitted that, reflected that a few times. Hey, come closer. Let's, there's a gap here. Let's try and close it up a little bit. Nice to see you in real life.
Thank you.
This is Lydia, everyone. Yeah, I think he said it himself quite a few times during the movie that he just wishes he could just go home and sit on a mountaintop and and connect to God. But he was on this kind of mission that he had to. He was called to take it to the world, and yeah, it comes with all the challenges of living in the world, and I think that's one of the greatest challenges of being a yogi in the world, because we see these kind of images of yogis sitting on the mountaintop, by the Ganges River, total renunciates from the world and have renounced the world, and it's it's a nice thing in theory. It's nice if you can, well, if you're called to, but to actually be connected to spirit, but then also working with the material world, with the manifest world, in the marketplace. A yogi in the marketplace is so much more challenging than the yogi on the mountaintop.
Well, isn't that what the Kundalini guy, he had a few businesses going in America. Not all of them were on mountaintops, some of them were businessmen.
Which who?
The one that turned into like Michael Jackson, he got bad mouthed in the industry, like he couldn't keep his hands to himself.
Oh.
Yeah, he's or whatever.
Bikram?
No, not Bikram, the other one, the Pakistani one, the one came from Pakistan. Brought the
Bhajan?
Kundalini to Canada and stuff.
Yogi Bhajan.
Yogi Bhajan, you mean?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, the LA one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know his full story. Not sure.
Kundalini to Canada or something.
He brought it to LA or California or something.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, things got out of hand, I guess.
Well, it's a story that's quite common, unfortunately, and that's I guess that's the difficulty of being human. Is that we live in this dualistic world, and even the most enlightened masters are still human, and so some of the human
personalities is like the religious personality. When I was looking into personalities, I was reading a book. They break down personality types into 7. Like the warrior, the corporate warrior, and the sage, and the scholar. Like I think Barack Obama has personalities like the religious type. So he's more dangerous because he's got that sort of religious presence, you know what I mean? It's like the Pope. They were quite thin in their days, touchy-feely, It just comes with being spiritual, I guess. There's that, I feel, the magnetism that, it's not just them, it's the other people as well. That's why you have religion. Isn't, what's his name said, Al Hubbard said, if you want to make lots of money, start a religion, Because it's got its benefits,
Absolutely, yeah. But yeah, Yogananda. Anyway, I mean, you guys got to see that movie because, he's a pivotal figure, let's say, in the history of modern yoga. But as I said, he's not the only one. Do we know any others around about that sort of time? See, I guess that time around the turn of that century, the previous century, the 1900s. That was, I guess, the time. I mean, when did aeroplanes start? Anyone know?
1920s.
1920s, wasn't it?
1915, I think.
So he went on an aeroplane.
He
Yogananda. He went on a ship once, but he also went on an aeroplane, I think, on the second trip or something. So it was the time when travel, international travel, started to happen. I mean, I guess ships had always been
He only went
happening.
back once, I remember.
Yeah, he went back.
1950 or something,
But, yeah.
to see his guru or something.
That's right. Came back, and I think when he came back on an aeroplane. But there's a famous, my teacher often quotes this famous quote from, and I can't remember who was the yogi master who quoted this, but it was a prediction like hundreds of years ago. This this yogi master, said, when the iron bird flies, that's when the teachings will go to the West. And so he predicted that centuries before we even knew what aeroplanes were. He said, the iron bird. And so, yeah, so this is the time, I guess, around that time. Does anyone know anyone who went earlier than Yogananda to the West?
I know Swami Vivekananda went for the World Religion Conference. I don't know what year that was.
He went, I believe he went around 1890.
Okay.
Mm. Yep.
And what about Krishnamurti? Is that a little bit Krishnamurti?
Krishnamacharya, do you mean? Or Krishnamurti?
Krishnamurti.
I think he's a bit later.
Yeah, it's a
Pretty
bit
sure.
later.
Yeah, pretty sure he's a bit later.
Probably in the 30s or 40s.
Mm.
1940s.
Yeah. So Swami Vivekananda, he was potentially the first, as far as I know, who introduced yoga to the West. Went to both to America and to Europe.
The interesting thing would be to know who would be the first that went from to the West to India to then say come, because that's what happened probably. Someone went to India, discovered that reality, and then said, all right, let's bring this thing.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, interesting thought, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Imagine.
then Yogananda had a vision, like that he would take his work to the West.
Mm.
So I feel like it was like a download from like his guru or whoever. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, definitely that probably also happened. Yeah, they both were happening at the same time. I found it interesting that the people, like his devotees, didn't wear yoga, like there were no yoga clothes. Like they were all in their like dresses. So I wonder how they did, like if they did yoga in like their...
And the hillbillies,
Huh?
what are you talking about?
Oh, like Yogananda's devotees in
Oh,
America.
Americans,
Yeah, like they would come and see him in their like professional dress clothes. Like I never saw them in yoga clothes. So
Didn't they this vision that they wore some kind of robes or something at some point?
Oh
Did
yeah,
they?
later in the movie they
Not sure.
did. Yeah.
They played tennis in bloody dresses in the 1930s.
Yeah, like they
didn't
probably did yoga in dresses. Yeah. But also his like eyes were really powerful and his voice. Yeah, like that's what I got out of it. Like his transmission to his devotees was not just through words, but from his
presence.
presence. Yeah, like just being around him was like a healing.
It's incredible, isn't it? Like normally you couldn't necessarily tell that on a video.
Yeah.
But you can really feel that presence, can't you?
Yeah.
Through his, exactly, through
And
his
he
gaze
projects
and
his
through
voice.
his voice.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, good point. Yeah, we could even look at the history of the yoga tights. When did yoga tights start? Who do we have to blame for that? Maybe Lululemon or something. So yeah, the history of yoga, that's kind of what we're looking to explore a bit today. And it's, it's in many ways it's a convoluted subject, in the sense that there's not really a definite beginning, really. It's all interweaved into various different traditions and sort of cultures. But does anyone have any clues as to, how far back could we go? I mean, we could go back forever. And my teacher training course said, well, we could go back to when man just became man and started moving. That was yoga in a way, and revering, a higher force. But if we look at, yoga as we know it, and I Actually, I mean, you guys might have had this discussion on the Friday. I don't think we had it last week, but did we talk about, well, what does yoga really mean? What is the meaning of yoga? Did we address that? No.
I think we started off.
You might have done it with Amy, but not in our class we didn't. So let's start there maybe. What does yoga mean? What's the word yoga mean? Everyone's got their own idea, I guess. Union. Thank you.
Or oneness.
Oneness.
To yoke.
To yoke. Yeah.
Expanding consciousness, connection to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like blowing my mind a little bit. Always thought it was movement and practice and how smooth you could flow through and how good your downward dog is. Yeah, I'm just realizing even through the documentary that it's just connection to breath.
You guys online, feel free to jump in anytime you want to. Add in your bit.
Out of the screen, jump out.
Jump out of the screen. Ali, go on.
I was going to say that. Oh, is the sound working?
Yeah.
Yep, might turn you up a little bit.
Thanks. So I was going to say that there's just all the different streams of yoga. So in the documentary, talked about Kriya Yoga and meditation, and then you've got the asana, like Samuel mentioned, which is more the physical. And so just through the history of yoga, there's so many different themes that I know we're going to talk about in class. Raja, Hatha is what we traditionally know as yoga, in the West, that is. Yeah, so there's all these different streams. There's karma yoga, something for everyone.
That's absolutely right, Ali. Thank you. Yeah, well done.
Coming back to what Ali is saying, for me, I really resonate with what Samuel just said, because I think I spent too much time in gyms, or at gyms, sorry, English not my first language. But what resonated to me was that if you're breathing, you're yoga. You're whatever you're doing, all the time you're doing yoga. You're a yogi by nature, so it's just acknowledging that. And ever since I heard that, and not just heard it, absorbed it, I'm a lot more conscious of what I do, what I say, and what I think. Because all the time I'm yoga, the awareness should be along my day, and my thoughts, what I do, what I think, what I feel should become that yoga, that union should become one, and that's kind of the flow that I'm trying to get to, and not that much the asana flow, the classes flow, so to speak, but a life flow.
Beautiful, Renata, thank you. And so, I mean, you said in all that you do, that is yoga, but you said another word there that's important to make that become yoga. What was that? What do you bring into all that you do to make sure it is yoga? Awareness, yeah. Yeah, because we can do things without awareness, or without connection. Someone else said connection, union. Yeah, yeah. Any other insights? Anything else to expand on what is yoga?
I think I was reading the Osho book, and it defined, I think he defined it as no mind. Defined yoga as no mind. So he went through this whole thing. It was like he said a statement, and then like he was like, "You're thinking right now," and now like when I ask you not to think, you're still thinking about it, something like that. So I think he defined it as no mind. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Sorry. To kind of follow on from what Lydia just said, I really resonated with the bit in the movie where he mentions that we're more than our personalities, we're more than the roles that we play or the bodies that we inhabit. It's this non-identification with all of these different layers of us. And yeah, it was just interesting that he seemed to have access to that domain of consciousness from such a young age. And I wonder whether there was work involved with that or whether that was gift. I guess it's a bit of both, but yeah.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you there.
Well, that also
omnipresent.
relates a bit with the other documentary that Amy sent when we first saw that we were not going to be able to watch the Yogananda one. I can't pronounce it properly. It's Nandi.
Oh, the one about Arunachala,
Yeah.
like the Maharaji's documentary. Didn't she send it?
Yes, I think that was the one. But the main object of that was that this master, he was always in silent. He didn't really
that
talk
was
much.
Maharaji.
Yeah. And what was interesting was to acknowledge that in every single language, whatever you come from, whatever language you speak, is always the I. I am something. I am lawyer. I am Hindu. I am Christian, and it's always the I in every single language for us to present ourselves. And that, at the end of the day, is the search for the I, but the real I. Who am I? Away from all these scenarios or environments or tags that we put to ourselves, and move away from that and really the search of the I.
Yeah, well explained. Thank you. So it's a path of self-inquiry, you could say. Yeah, a journey of self-inquiry, getting to understand or to know who we are, who is this I that is speaking, and this I that is seeing. Yeah, beautiful, everyone.
And one other thing, like working with clients, like I was reading something about how the first step is to get someone to become aware of their body, and then the next step is to like get them to breathe and be aware of their body, because you can breathe and still be in your mind. Like you can be connected to your breath but still be thinking. So it's like, how can you embody the movement like in your body and then breathe from that space rather than from this space?
Yeah, no, beautiful, and a really important point, I think, that you're raising there, because if we consider what modern yoga is, as far as yoga in the West, and a lot of us have come to yoga just through the asana, through the physical practice, and the majority of people out there, probably 90% of people out in the world, think that that's what yoga is. It's just a physical practice that maintains health and vitality, and maybe there's a bit of relaxation involved, so there's a little bit of de-stress as well. But if you told, what did you say, Sam? What did you say yoga was?
Consciousness.
Expanding consciousness and connection to God. If we just, in our gym class said, right, we're here to expand our consciousness, to connect to God today, everyone would be like out the door, or like, what the fuck? So while really, I mean, that's really what it's all about, and and everything everyone said is what it's all about.
I won't say I disagree with you. I wouldn't want to get on your bad side. It's not in my nature to, but I don't disagree, but I find the physical side of yoga highly beneficial, also from my own personal perspective. Because I see it as a synchronization with God, such as the ego being here, if I walk into a big head, and with the daily rigmarole that's involved, for instance, I'm just giving as an example, putting your head or pressing your head, that's resetting your ego. So the physical aspect and the synchronization is something that God actually wants you to submit at certain parts of the day or whatever, and certain actions, certain postures and certain things. It's a form of worship, and it's used throughout all the cultures if you actually look at it. So
Yeah.
it's right in front of your face, but you're not actually using it. And people probably thinking these guys are in tights and they're bananas and they look fit, but what is it? They're just a bunch of weird hippies, you know? And that's the personification that's given to the yoga. But in hindsight,
Oh, look, I totally agree with you, and Islam is probably one of the best religions to display that, because, you know...
Even the things that the Orthodox Ethiopians, the ones that are the closest to Jesus, I've seen them on Fridays, they actually live and do the same prayer. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
And in South America, it's been going on forever.
Yeah, but part of that ritual
Yeah.
is actually, there's asana to some degree involved in it.
I'm a
There's
Muslim,
movement.
but I find that I'm not, they used to call me part-time Muslim, the boys. So I don't know why I'm called part-time Muslim, but it's something that I come across as practicing. But I feel more in the zone because the postures are more focused, more attentive, more disciplined. I've actually shared this with some of the people like Amy, saying that you can be next to a woman side by side and they're in tights and not even looking at them because you're actually fully focused. That wouldn't actually happen in an Islamic environment. They pray, it's always separate.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just the fact that you're breathing, you're relaxing, and I prayed as a young boy, I never got anything out of it. You know, and people would actually ridicule me for actually speaking like that, but in essence that was the truth, and it's irrelevant. So you need that synchronity with God. That's what people are missing in society these days, to catch a breath. It's not necessarily to go do a 45-minute yoga. I often walk around Princess Park and I might go and do sun salutations, you know, and I feel good just doing 3 or 4 minutes of that. I find that more valuable probably because it's more spontaneous and it's probably something that I'm trying to incorporate into my practice more so than doing 10 classes a day, you know, and 5, whatever the case, you know. Anyhow.
It also brings up the question of, like, in religion you pray to a god, like the god is like somewhere outside of you, whereas, like, you know, Yogananda was talking about, like, God is within, like we're not finding God, we're shedding the layers that stop you from feeling your connection to God from within. So it's like if the word God doesn't resonate, you know, you can use like universal energy or whatever, a spirit or whatever it is. Because it's not actually like God in heaven, it's like just that universal energy that we can all access in order to increase our consciousness.
Absolutely, yeah, good point.
It's not like getting to God, it's coming back to God.
Yeah, it's like shedding all the stuff that stops you from accessing that. And that's what the asanas, I feel like, do, because I know if I'm like stressed from work and then I go through an asana practice, at the end I feel more connected to myself. And then, you know, that's when you consider meditation, or when I consider meditation and feel a little bit more centered. So it helps me center back in. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So it's all you know, this connection. I mean, we've sort of established it is, you know, it's union or connection to yoke, to bring together, to connect, whether it's connecting through the asana so let's strip it back down to, you know, when you're in the gym and you're just introducing people to yoga, then you connect them to their body. Yeah. So let's connect to our body. Let's do this practice mindfully, as in, you know, be aware of how you move, how you feel as you move. And that's yoga. There's nothing, you know.
Without dropping the G word.
Without dropping it. Yeah, there's no need necessarily
to our body.
But isn't like when you say namaste, it's like
Yeah, and the breath, and that's the other element that we create that connection to, and then that's there in every class, even in the gym. That's a big part, because I guess even when I teach in a gym, and I actually really enjoy teaching in a gym because I feel it's it's actually doing the work. I'm the yogi in the marketplace there.
Yeah.
Some yogi teachers going, oh no, gyms, I don't want to teach in a gym because it's, people don't understand yoga there. I want to teach in a yoga studio where everyone knows what they're coming for. But for me, it's kind of like, well, actually, that's then where we need to be.
Yeah.
We need to be where people don't understand what yoga's about. So you start off nice and basic, but then you start dropping little hints, planting little seeds here and there. And
Because
then
you could be the catalyst for someone's spiritual
That was my case. I came here because of my yoga teacher at the gym that I was attending to.
Yeah, so you have such an impact in those environments. It's like, I'm in a physio clinic, but I've started attracting like an astrologer, like people will, once you're in flow, whatever, you'll start to attract clients no matter where you are. So you don't have to be in the fancy yoga studio. You could be like at the back of a massage parlor, but clients, like the universe will start to send you the clients that need you. And then it's actually a disservice, is what I've learned, if you don't share what you're up to in your evolution, because they've come to you for where you are. So you don't share above where you've gotten, because then you're not embodied within that authentic state. But if you're able to share what you've embodied, then you're actually like helping the specific people that come to you and meeting their highest potential within their spiritual journey, even if they don't know that they've started that. Yeah.
Beautiful. No. Very, very wise words.
Because she's graduated already.
Very wise words indeed. So we're talking about, when we're talking about this form of yoga that we know at the gym and that is predominant in our Western culture. What are we talking about generally? What do we call this type of yoga?
Is it Ashtanga yoga? No.
What is it like doing?
Hatha yoga. Hatha yoga. Hatha is kind of like the umbrella of the modern day yoga that we practice, which has a big focus on asana, but also pranayama and meditation. So you could say in a way, the main elements of Hatha Yoga are asana, pranayama, and meditation. In a nutshell. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't practice any of the other types of yoga as well, but if we're going to start to, because there are these different labels of types of yoga, and so Hatha is that umbrella that represents the physical, a big focus on the physical aspect. But still, with the intention, a Hatha yogi's intention, what's the sort of end goal? And you could use Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as an inspiration for what Hatha yoga's goals are. So in the 8 limbs of yoga, which we'll have a lecture on that, we'll go into a lot more detail at some point. But does anyone know what the last limb of the 8 limbs is? Samadhi. Samadhi, yeah. And what does samadhi mean? Bliss. Enlightenment. Absorption. So kind of like, we talked about, is this idea of union with God, connecting to God, transcendence, all these different aspects of what is yoga. And so samadhi is kind of like, in a way, it's like the pinnacle of achieving that to some degree, because then there's also various states of samadhi. It's not just well, you get to that point, tick the box, done, work done, can go home now. You know, it's a lot more in depth than that. But samadhi is still, let's say, some kind of drive towards self-realization. I like the word self-realization because that also incorporates this idea of self-inquiry, understanding who we are, realizing who we are at our deepest nature. And so samadhi is not necessarily self-realization, because, you know, you can have tastes of samadhi, and probably many of us have had tastes of samadhi when you have a really blissful immersion in your meditation practice, or, you know, in any other situation in life where you totally have an ecstatic, blissful experience where ideally your individual ego dissolves, or you transcend it, even if it's just a momentary thing where suddenly, you know, that's dissolved. The ego of the individuality of me in this body has dissolved for a moment, and I've come into this blissful state. But it doesn't mean that you're fully self-realized. To be self-realized means that you're in that state all the time. And you can see.
So would you say samadhi is like a state of self-realization? Yeah. That's a good.
Yeah. And I mean, there's different. They actually have different names of different types of samadhis. So in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali describes the different types of samadhi that you can
relevant
taste.
to the Mr. Nothing, the Mr. Nothing thing?
Mr. Nothing.
You should know about Mr. Nothing. Like non-attachment and stuff, that where you get to that state.
Yeah.
You haven't got attachments, not necessarily. Bliss is a form of that. You're not, so happy, you're not attached, and then you walk out, then you're back to the real world. We'll have that form of bliss, but then to get to that state, as possible, it's so hard in this day and age where you have no attachment to sort of strive. That's why we're all here, to one state, and to reach that state of non-attachment where we're feeling free.
Absolutely. No, you're totally right. That's a big part of it. Non-attachment.
Being Mr. Nobody.
Being Mr. Nobody, yeah.
Is one of the states like, you know how Yogananda was able to consciously die? Like he chose his death.
Yep. That is a I can't remember the name of it, but that's one of the samadhis.
Yeah,
it's the conscious release of the soul.
And would
from
you
the
say
body.
that when someone releases their soul, that you can be conscious of your rise up from the physical body within your soul? Like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep. That's the idea.
Yeah.
We won't know till we die. And if we manage to achieve that, but that is the idea.
Isn't that what happened to Sadhguru's wife?
Yeah,
She's quite young.
I don't know her story.
What happened to her?
I just
A little
heard,
controversial.
I just heard about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because my friend said, he killed his partner, and I was just like, I really like this guy. I'm gonna check it out for myself, and then that's
Because
exactly
she was
what
quite
happened.
young and healthy, like maybe 30, 35.
Yeah.
But he said that there were people around and she reached a state of, you might have said samadhi, or it was something like that. She was ready.
Yeah, she consciously chose to leave her body because she was at a good place.
Yeah, she was young and healthy. The only thing I struggled with, she did have a young daughter.
But it's not about, like, if you're on your spiritual journey, then anything external is but it is.
Yeah, so that's what happened. And there were some questions raised, but ultimately he was never charged with it.
No. And he does talk
I
about
think
it.
because there were witnesses around, so they could see that
Interesting.
he
I'd
didn't do anything.
I'd like to check that out.
Yeah, I'll post it. I'll
There's
post
a documentary on it or something. Oh, great.
Yeah, I was a bit freaked out when I first heard it, so I was like,
So, anyway, going back to Hatha Yoga. So, Hatha Yoga is the yoga that, that generally we are here to practice and to learn about. But we also have these other kind of elements of some of the other yogas infused, because it doesn't mean that you have to, if you know, I'm just a Hatha yogi, you know, that's all I do, is practice my Hatha. There are other, you know, there's many roads up the same mountain. So we could say that self-realization is really the pinnacle of all the yogas. Self-realization, and whether we see that from a dualistic or a non-dual perspective, it doesn't matter. So we'll go into all of that too at some point. I think next, I don't know, you guys, Fridays, we're doing non-dualism next week in Carnegie.
What do you mean by that? Like, whether you see it as a non-dualistic or we're going to go into that?
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much. A little bit. Well, dualistic means, you know, we live in a dual world. There's you know, there's the separation. There's the yin and the yang. Yeah? The yin and the yang. But the ultimate transcendence of dualism is non-dualism, where there is no yin and yang. There's no separateness. So in the idea of something dualistic means that there's a separation. And so the idea of non-dualism is that there's no separation, in a nutshell. But you can look at God as separate. You know, you revere God. You revere, even if you talk about the God within me, you can still see that in a dualistic manner.
Yeah.
You know, I and me, and that is God.
Yeah.
And once we merge, then it's non-dual. There's no dualism left in God. At the ultimate kind of non-dual perception of what God is a non-dual reality.
Yeah.
Which, in theory, is the only true reality.
It's quite true.
The reality of dualism is an illusion.
It's contradictory, really.
It's contradictory, but it isn't. It is and it isn't. But you know, Advaita Vedanta is the ultimate non-dual path, and we will explore some Advaita Vedanta along the way. And you know, from an Advaita Vedantan perspective, is that all of this is Maya. Maya is illusion. We live in an illusory world. Meaning, well, what is not illusory? Anything that is eternal is non-illusory. Anything that lasts forever. And so everything in our manifest world, we know, even though we don't sometimes like to admit it, but we know that nothing lasts forever in this manifest world. Nothing. We know our body's going to die. We know the buildings will fall down, the trees come and go. We know even the mountains that have been there for hundreds of years, but eventually they crumble. And we even know that the earth will one day pass away. Our dear planet isn't going to last forever.
Oh, can I just say, like, in terms of the Kundalini, like, it starts at the root chakra, and then it's the snake that goes up. So initially it's dual, like there's masculine and feminine energies, like right side masculine, left side feminine, that do this. But ideally at the pinnacle of Tantra is Samadhi, where the snake unites and then both people's third eye opens, and then you access the divinity. So it's very similar to that, like, but it's about the asanas actually work on a chakra level to unlock the energy, because they believe in Tantra, like you can't access that without working through the chakras. So that's like all of this movement starts to open up, like the root to the heart, to the third eye, And I think yoga does work on those base chakras as well as the higher chakras, whereas just meditation without the yoga part misses the lower chakras and focuses a lot on it's called white tantra, which is the working on the higher chakras, and red tantra is the lower chakras, and then rose tantra is when the white tantra meets the red tantra in the heart. So it's heart of tantra, where you open your heart to life. So you actually want to not only ascend, but you actually want to embody. You want to ascend and ground at the same time in your heart, which is rose tantra. Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you. And look, great points there. And tantra is a big part of actually what we're doing in hatha. So in hatha actually grew out of tantra. So tantra was prior to hatha. Tantra was kind of like the practice of yoga that then in some way got broken up, you could say. Got broken up to some degree, but this is the thing, like this is what I'm trying to say, is that it's not, while we're here to focus mostly on hatha yoga, because otherwise it's not a 200-hour course. Otherwise it's a 7-year course if we want to try and do all the aspects of yoga. But there's all these different elements of all the different streams are still intertwined. They're not completely separate. They can be. Someone can say, I'm just a tantric yoga and that's all I do, or I'm just a bhakti yogi and that's all I do. But it doesn't have to be. And in my experience, it's more powerful when you can embrace all the streams. And somehow they all intertwine anyway. Even if, let's say someone says, I'm just a bhakti yoga and I don't care about hatha yoga, but still, if he's going to maintain his physical body, he's going to do some physical postures. He's going to do some kind of exercise, and if he's got the yogic mind there, then he will do it mindfully. And so, yeah, I feel like you can't be completely separate, individualized within the different types of yogas. But saying that, what are these different types of yoga then? So we've sort of mentioned tantra, we've mentioned hatha. I inadvertently meant, well, good one. Vinyasa comes under the umbrella of hatha. So hatha yoga, and that's why we're kind of a little bit more interested in the hatha yoga, in the sense that that is what is mostly practiced here in the West. And hatha yoga is the umbrella that incorporates all these physical practices. So it's vinyasa, it's yin, it's bikram, it's ashtanga, it's power yoga, it's Gita yoga, it's, I don't know, what other yogas are there? Restorative yoga, anyone think of any others?
Nidra?
Yoga Nidra, yeah, maybe we could put it in there as well. Yeah, Yoga Nidra, definitely. Yeah, we could chuck aerial in there. We could even chuck in beer yoga, that's the thing these days, isn't it? Beer yoga and goat yoga or something. I've seen, I don't know if these are just memes you see on Instagram, but you know, it's essentially all the yogas that we are mostly familiar with that incorporate the asana, let's say, as part of its element, is hatha yoga. And it's interesting that then, well, hold on, isn't hatha yoga just its own thing? Because often you'll go to a class and it'll be like on your schedule. Yeah. Even here at Summer Healing, we've got vinyasa, we've got yin, we've got hatha yoga. So obviously hatha yoga is its own thing. It is and it isn't. Hatha yoga is the source, but then somehow through this filtering and specialization that has happened here in the West of, and this is a Western thing, I mean, influenced by India to some degree, but definitely sort of enhanced here in the West, But yeah, Hatha Yoga is, let's say, the source. It is all Hatha Yoga. It's the umbrella that incorporates all of this. But then somehow Hatha Yoga still needs to be presented. And so sometimes it's put down, I teach Hatha Yoga, or this is a Hatha Yoga class. And sometimes it's considered, Hatha Yoga is somewhere in between Vinyasa and Yin. Somewhere it's not too strong, but not too soft.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it.
And that's not a bad interpretation, because what does the word Hatha actually mean?
Sun and moon.
Sun and moon.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you. It's sun and moon. Although that is one interpretation. One interpretation is sun and moon. Ha being sun and ta being moon, I believe. And if we look at it from sun and moon, what's that implying? Dualism. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's kind of implying that yin and yang idea that many of us are probably more comfortable with. Yin and yang being, the opposites. Mm-hmm. And so what's the aim then within this yin and yang, or within this sun and moon?
Balance.
Balance, thank you. So to create a balance within the polarities of who we are.
And you said pranayama, meditation, and vinyasa is pretty much what makes up
Asana.
an asana.
No.
Yeah.
Asana, don't worry about vinyasa.
Okay, sorry, yeah. Pranayama, asana,
And meditation. Yeah. They're like the key elements, let's say, of Hatha Yoga.
I thought Chandra is moon.
Yeah, well, you're right. Chandra in Sanskrit is moon.
Chandra.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where that type comes from.
Yeah.
As another
word for it.
Another word for it or something. I'm not too sure.
I was listening today. The moon has a duality side too. So when it's in a crescent, it's I think masculine, and when it's in a full, it's feminine. Something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Something
Waxing and waning moon.
Yeah.
Represents the
moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's called Chandra when it's half moon, and then Ta when it's a full moon.
Maybe, potentially, I'm not sure. Something to look into. But another interpretation of Hatha is effort, the yoga of effort. This is another interpretation of what the word Hatha means. And so what does this imply then?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious really, isn't it? Implies that we come to the mat, we actually have to do a bit of work to achieve.
It also means the whole journey of gaining the strength to be able to hatha. So it's not just coming to the mat and practicing that practice, is also getting strength in the core, letting go for the fears of all the asanas, letting go of preconceptions. And I find that part of things, the effort part of things, not necessarily just stepping on the mat is an effort.
Absolutely, no, great point. So it's the effort of the practice, but it's then bringing that practice into our daily life, into all that we are and all that we do. Absolutely. And another interpretation of that is really discipline. And discipline, often we associate discipline negatively, as got to discipline this naughty kid. but actually to embrace a discipline in your life for a purpose, for a beneficial purpose, is actually a beautiful thing when you can really align with the discipline.
Well, I like the fact that you sort of become your own doctor in one sense, or doctor or healer, because there's always, we know from classes they have great reference to, this is good for, the hips carry this, the jaw carries that, the belly carries that. It's very informative and something that you need to take to heart for yourself so you can use it for your own healing process. So the physical aspects highly relevant to my especially coming to advanced years in my time. Bodily maintenance is also required for a healthy mind.
Absolutely.
Get up, good work.
Good point.
Yes.
Stay as sexy as you.
So we've understood, in a nutshell, the essence of the hatha, then hatha yoga. And I pronounce it hatha.
Yeah.
That's actually.
Hatha.
Would you say that's right, Ira?
I think so.
Yeah. That's my understanding. In Sanskrit, you say hatha, because it's written Hatha. Everyone says hatha.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be pronounced hatha. So hatha yoga is that. And so what are some of the other streams of yoga?
Is Kundalini one? Or is that part of Tantra?
That is interfused with Tantra and with hatha. And it can be seen as its own thing. And this is, you mentioned before, what's the yogi
Bhajan.
Yogi Bhajan, who created this kind of almost trademarked form of Kundalini, is again, he's created that as a stream of hatha, as a stream of hatha, like we have Iyengar and Ashtanga and all the other little streams. He's created that as his kind of almost trademarked sequences and way, but the essence of Kundalini goes way back to Tantra. It's in Hatha. It's been part of the practice forever, and it goes back even further. We'll get to that too. So yes, Kundalini can sometimes be its own thing. It can be part of Tantra, or it can be part of Hatha. Any other ones? Kriya yoga, yeah. And what is Kriya yoga? Do you have any idea?
What I could understand, it was more about the meditation part, not necessarily the physical part, the awakening. But I didn't really read about it, so I don't keep any of these concepts.
Yeah, more or less. And do you have any idea where this originated from?
I can guess, but I don't know, I guess.
I
think it's, I'm reading the autobiography of the yogi, so I kind of understand that it's coming from India. It's coming from the Krishna side of things, but that's the way I understood it. It all comes from that meditation and that awareness.
Good. You're absolutely pretty much right there. What you're saying is yes. I mean, again, and this is the thing. Sometimes it's really hard to pinpoint and say, right, this type of yoga started right on this date. That's when it was invented, and and that's it's very convoluted and complicated, like how and when. It's something that evolves. So it's not it's not finite. So it doesn't have an absolute beginning. None of this has an absolute beginning. So Kriya Yoga, as far as I understand, has been mainly created or let's say popularized by Yogananda and his kind of self-realization fellowship. They created this idea of Kriya Yoga. But again, the practices that they do are transmissions from their gurus, from their gurus, and from their gurus, and from their gurus. So these practices have always, or as far as we know, have been happening for centuries. But Yogananda really formalized this as a practice of Kriya Yoga in the self-realization, through the self-realization fellowship that he created.
part of the book, he says that his father, and then he was initiated in Kriya Yoga more than once. I didn't really get to what that initiation meant. Like the guru would just take him and perform that session of initiation in Kriya Yoga, but I didn't really understand what was that about. I could just imagine like candles and
No.
things like that.
No, the initiation is essentially the instruction. So you guys are being initiated as teacher trainers right now.
Doesn't originally come from two books, Indian books, the first two books officially. One's called, is it Ramayana, the other one starts with M.
The Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
That's it.
The one's the greatest love story, and one's the greatest.
Yeah, that's where all originates from,
Yoga
doesn't it?
from the Mahabharata,
Yeah,
the war.
two Indian books, that's where I would say they came from.
That's part of it too, yeah. That's part of the trajectory. It's,
5,000 to 7,000 years, 5,000 minimum. Yeah.
we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
No worries, we're getting hungry.
But yeah, Kriya Yoga, absolutely. That's a form of yoga which is focused on certain exercises, but like you said, they're meditation practices and pranayama. So there's certain practices, let's say, but they're more internal practices rather than external. So they're meditations and pranayams. Now, I don't have I work with some kriyas, let's say, because we all do in this practice anyway. It's interwoven even into the hatha, but I've never been initiated in the self-realization tradition, so I don't know the full sequence of events that they do.
Yeah, so I actually have experience with that because 15 years ago I was like in a library and in a squat, so it was like a very interesting place to find those books. And I found two books from Yoga Ananda which are all based on affirmations. One is called Scientific Affirmation for Healing, and the other one is Metaphysical Affirmation for Healing. So basically the two books are quite different in the way that you do the affirmations. Or I have 3 affirmations that I say every day when I start my practice, which I basically learned from the book. And I have to say that it really changed my life. Well, are in Italian. Are in Italian because the books that I have are translated in Italian. So I don't know actually the actual translation in English because maybe I can make it up for you, but in the way that I read it is so clear for me because I'm from Italian. So it's more straightforward. But I really I encourage everyone to check those books because they are really powerful. Like a felt shift.
Wonderful. Yeah,
would you mind sharing what they are in Italian? I speak Italian, I'd love to know.
Pardon?
Dice, dillo in italiano, che lei parla italiano.
Ah, ok.
Come io.
Io so che il potere dell'universo non ha limiti ed essendo fatto a sua immagine ho anch'io la forza necessaria per superare ogni ostacolo. Io possiedo la capacità inventiva dello spirito. L'intelligenza infinita mi aiuterà a risolvere ogni problema. Io sono sempre nell'abbondanza perché posso accedere all'infinita banca celeste. Il bene presente ovunque mi attrarrà ciò di cui ho bisogno nel momento in cui ho bisogno. Il sole ha incominciato a fendere il cielo buio delle mie limitazioni. Sono figlio dell'universo. Quel che è suo è mio. This is one.
Wow.
Beautiful. it's really, really beautiful, really powerful,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes.
Yeah, to translate that,
Do you
we
say
might
it
need
out
a little bit
loud
of
to
time.
yourself or in your
Yeah,
head?
like as you
Say it
said,
out loud.
I say it like this every day.
That felt like receiving secrets of life.
Yeah.
I understand it, and it's like it's still good enough.
We
Yeah.
got, we
Yeah, it's
felt
like
the transmission.
you enter in a different.
Lines.
I feel it in my body, like
Yeah.
Energized.
that I enter
Yeah.
in a dimension kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, thanks for sharing. Wow. So there you go, Kriya Yoga. We have a
Are you able
little
to
embodiment.
post books in the
Yeah.
chat?
Yeah, I can do
Yeah.
photo and send pictures.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, what are some of the other streams?
Bhakti.
Bhakti.
Yeah.
Thank you. What is bhakti?
It's like devotional yoga.
Devotional yoga.
Yeah.
So if you ever actually went to India, Indian people who embody yoga, really, it's part of the Indian culture. The majority of Indian people don't practice hatha yoga; they practice bhakti yoga. Would you say that's right, Lida?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bhakti is kind of like one of the biggest forms of yoga practice in India, and it's the yoga of devotion. And so, what are we devoting to? What's the devotion about?
When do you think God,
Yeah.
the divine?
Yeah.
Or to like the goddesses and the gods like Shiva and Ganesha and like the Indian goddesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In the book of Journey Home,
Oh, yeah.
Swami, what's his name?
I don't know, Raga, something with an I.
He studied all the different teachings, and he trained with Vipassana, Goenkaji. He trained with all these highly evolved masters in the jungle who were levitating and everything, and everybody invited him to come and train with them. I'll teach you. And after just wandering and just testing all of it out, he chose Bhakti Yoga in the end. And so when I heard that, this has to be something that this guy chose that path.
And that was a girl named Meera, and she was really in love with Krishna. She was really in love with the god, and she has all these like stories and songs, and she would just perform. So everyone called her crazy, basically. So like people who do follow Bhakti Yoga are like a little bit crazy in the sense of they're into the songs and the dances and really very loud, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like the most famous Bhakti yogi.
There's also Radha, isn't there? Like Krishna's.
She's Krishna's wife, and
Yeah.
then, so there's meant to be gods, right? But she was immortal, like she was human, and like she was married off, and like the other family threw her out, so it's like really chaotic. But she's like she was human, rather
Yeah.
than Radha was the wife, like she's the god.
Yeah. Because the archetype of Radha, you can work like, there's a book called Awakening Shakti, and they go through all the goddesses and the archetypes and the energy behind each goddess.
Sally Kempton's book.
What's that?
Sally
Yeah, I
Kempton's
think
book.
it's that one. Yeah.
It's a good book. Got that one.
Mm.
So yeah, bhakti is the yoga devotion, and mostly seen as singing praises to the Lord or to the whichever particular deity you resonate with, and all these various deities. And this is the interesting thing that happens in India, and in particular in Hinduism, is that all these deities are essentially like different energies. So the different streams of energy. So God is one, and even in Hinduism, at its core, they believe God is one. But yet, as this stream of energy manifests into this manifest world, there are different types of energy that we resonate with. So in the pure,
It's like archetypes.
Yeah.
archetypes, yep, yeah, broken down into many different sort of layers and whatnot. But you know, the classic Trimurti, for example, is the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, as the Trimurti being the three main energies of the manifest world. So that's Brahma is the creator energy, so brings everything into being. Vishnu is the preserver, what holds it and holds it as it's alive, I guess, is the holding energy. And then Shiva, in this representation of Shiva, is the destroyer, that destroys it so that new life can then come again. But Shiva can also then be seen as the supreme consciousness. It can be seen as that non-dual space, essentially, is that Shiva space. And then often the female deities are more about the energy within the natural world. So for example, Kali is the fierce goddess, and she's a representation of the Kundalini energy when it awakens fiercely and strongly, and that's Kali going, pokes the tongue out and destroys everything inside. And then Durga is the goddess that rides the tiger or the lion, and she's also Kundalini energy represented as a god, but once it's kind of been somewhat tamed, you know, you've got the Kali, which is the untamed essence of that energy, and then you've got Durga, who's like, you know, okay, now this energy's, you know, we're riding it essentially, and she's still super powerful, but you know, she's at ease compared to Kali, who's really. So Bhakti Yoga is essentially recognizing all these different energies, and you know, whichever one calls, whichever path you're on, whichever moment in your journey that you might resonate with a different energy, then that's the energy you devote to. And you know, in many ways, it's also seen as the yoga of the heart, because it's that devotion is that heart energy, is to be in your heart, to be fully, essentially grateful for the magnificence of this birth and the magnificence of the divine. That's you know, from a dualistic perspective, may be seen as something to strive for, but then also from that non-dual perspective, as seen as something within our hearts. It's always there within us, the divinity within us. So whether we're singing praises to God from a dualistic perspective, or just singing praises to our own hearts, praising the divinity within us, it's all up to, you know, your interpretation really, but that's what it's about. It's a yoga of devotion. So it's often manifested as a song or a mantra. So, or prayer. Prayer is another way we can look at bhakti. And so, you know, other religions too have prayer as a way to make that connection to that divinity. So there's bhakti. And then there is, what else? Any other ideas? Kirtan as part of bhakti, definitely. Yeah, kirtan is a.
That's the chanting.
Yeah. Any other ideas of any other streams?
Raja Yoga.
What was that?
Raja Yoga.
Raja Yoga. Yeah. So Raja Yoga, again, it's a bit like Kundalini Yoga and Tantra Yoga. It's kind of like, it can be its own thing, but it can also be taken in by hatha. So as a hatha yogi, we're also raja yogis to some degree. And a lot of the other yogas too might say we're also raja yogis. But raja yogi is, I mean, raja means the kingly or the godly, the kingly, the royal. Raja is royal. So it's the royal path. And so it's really, when you're looking at Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and his 8 limbs, it's the peak of the 8 limbs. So it's really the meditation part. Raja Yoga is the essence of the meditation. So Raja Yoga doesn't worry about the asana. However, even a good Raja Yogi would most likely do some asana, because otherwise how's he going to sit and do his meditation for a couple of hours every day? So that's why I'm saying that they all interweave. But Raja is kind of like bringing together those last couple of, let's say those last 3, or you could say even 4 limbs of yoga. You have asana, you have pranayama, you have pratyahara, you have dharana, dhyana and samadhi. So in essence, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, those 3 aspects, which is the meditation process, let's say, to achieve self-realization. So yeah, Raja Yoga. And then you mentioned,
Karma. I said karma.
Karma Yoga. Yeah. Any idea what that is? What's Karma Yoga?
Yeah. Action. Yeah. Like do good. Goes around, comes around.
Yeah, so that it's implied upon that idea of karma, what goes around comes around, is that every action has a result, doesn't it? So it's the yoga of action, it's the path of action. So it's also known as the path of service, in the sense that it's selfless service. And this is where we have to really understand the depth of karma yoga, because often people say, oh yeah, karma yoga, just we do something good so we can get something good back. But really then that's when you're doing that for a selfish purpose, really.
Yeah.
I was listening to something about karma yesterday, not sorry, recently, and regarding actions, reactions, but more so what's relevant to karma, I found that I said there was the intention. So if you do something, if I do something bad to Sam without any intention, it's not necessarily sometimes karma, like kind of thing. If you have the intention, it forms the karma kind of thing. Just conveying what I read, it's not necessarily that I know it.
Yeah.
It's like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. Well, being an innocent bystander, that can create bad karma. That's still a bad intention, because you're still visualising that you're just as guilty. But I guess intention, you still have the benefit of doing something by accident, So that's what because consciously making forming an intention to do something bad that's different. That will form karma. But you can make mistakes, and that I don't think necessarily will come back to you in a bad way. When you think of karma, there's also the fact that it's not your own actions; it's also the actions of your ancestors which are connected to you, and that's the part that.
Yeah, there's so many depths to the way we can look at karma. Yeah, absolutely. But,
May I add
sorry?
May I add something?
Yeah, sure, Anna.
Does this sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with you, Tony. I've got mindfulness in my notes for karma yoga, because it is about that doing things with intention, rather than just sort of going about your day or whatever mindlessly. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Sally. Yeah, but ultimately the idea of the Karma Yoga is selfless service. So that you, all your actions, you're actually offering them to God, not to any benefit to yourself or anyone else, but you offer your service to God.
Do you mean like not giving to receive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can still receive.
Oh yeah.
But you're not.
It's not the main intention.
It's not intentional.
The intention is not to have a reciprocity. It's not. You're not doing this for a personal result.
Just with that, touching on what Tony said, is having the intention behind his acts. You consciously connecting with the reason why you're doing it is to offer it to God.
Yeah.
It's important, as we're talking about power of affirmations, to be highly aware and attuned to that motivation while we do it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, good point. There's one more stream of yoga we haven't touched on.
What is Ashtanga?
No, Ashtanga is, it's an interesting topic because Ashtanga is actually the 8 limbs of yoga. So traditionally, the 8 limbs of yoga is called Ashtanga. So in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, Ashtanga means the 8 limbs. And that's the Sanskrit name for the 8 limbs. However, then in the early 1900s, in the early 20th century, Patabi Joyce was one of the students of Krishnamacharya. So this is another big figure that I haven't mentioned yet. Krishnamacharya. He was probably, we could almost call him in a way the godfather of modern yoga, of modern Hatha yoga, is Krishnamacharya. So he, around about the time that Yogananda, all these Yoganandas, Shivanandas, you get mixed up sometimes. About the time that Yogananda went to the States, around about 1920, Krishnamacharya was also formalizing Hatha yoga, and he was bringing elements of even sometimes I think outside of traditional yoga practices, but incorporating even gymnastics into the practice, and having a much more much more sort of intense asana practice that he developed, but still incorporating the pranayama and the meditation and all those aspects. But he became this kind of really important figure in establishing Hatha yoga as it is today. And he had 3 main students. He had, or 4 main students, but he obviously had many students, but 4 very influential students. One was called Devi Ma, I think. And I think she was from the West. She actually came from America or somewhere, if I'm not wrong. I'm not sure. Maybe France. Can't remember exactly. But she went and studied with him in India, and she brought the yoga to the West. And then he also had his son, Desikachan, who started his own kind of school of yoga and focused a lot on yoga therapy. That was a big thing of his. And his other 2 students were Iyengar and Patabi Joyce. And so Iyengar, we've all heard of Mr. Iyengar. He went on to form the Iyengar style of yoga, which is now very much one of the most popular forms of Hatha yoga. And Patabi Joyce went on to create Ashtanga yoga. So Ashtanga yoga was essentially Patabi Joyce's trademark vinyasa style. So Patabi Joyce he developed this really dynamic, flowing form of yoga called Ashtanga. He called it Ashtanga, using the name from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras,
Wow.
but focusing on this particular asana, flow. Yeah. So that's the story of Ashtanga.
Okay.
And so then Ashtanga became the first real vinyasa, in a way, because Ashtanga is essentially vinyasa. It's a flow. And then, but because Pattabhi Jois literally trademarked, well, this is my series, my form, and then if anyone wanted to teach that, they had to go and do the training with him, and quite a rigorous training to be able to teach his form in his way, and you weren't allowed to go off, you know, you couldn't bring in your own elements into it. It had to be very rigorously followed as a sequence. So I guess at some point a few people caught on and go, well, it'd be nice to incorporate some of that into our hatha yoga, and so that's where vinyasa came. So vinyasa was like this kind of, you know, everything's kind of filtered down to some degree. And but vinyasa was in a way, it was a filtering down of Ashtanga, but it was also an expansion of it too, because with vinyasa today, you go to a vinyasa class and every vinyasa teacher teaches something completely different, because this is the whole idea of vinyasa. It gives you the freedom to, you know, express yourself as a teacher and create your own flow if you want to. And every vinyasa course, like our course here too, is we're vinyasa / hatha. So there will be, when we come to yoga sequencing, there will be a suggested way we sequence things to our classes, but with still a sense of freedom that you can, if you want to do this pose instead of that, you can. Because why not? Because we're not as rigorous as some of the other traditions, which were very, very sort of like regimented. And so a lot of yoga traditions, a lot of hatha yoga traditions created a certain style or form, and some of them were very sort of, you know, to the book. You know, it's got to be this way, nothing else. And that's just part of the discipline that was created within that particular tradition. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either side of the coin. In fact, in my opinion, having a good, rigorous, disciplined tradition to start with is actually really beneficial, because it gives you a foundation to work from. It makes you a better vinyasa teacher that has the freedom to bring in elements if you've started with a foundational practice. So going to Ashtanga first, or going to Iyengar first, in my opinion, is almost like not a compulsory, but an ideal preliminary to coming here and doing the teach training. You know, do a couple of years of Ashtanga or Iyengar.
There aren't that many studios around though.
It's true.
Ashtanga and Iyengar.
Not as much as it used to be, because again, I think it's just.
It's very strict.
It's with the Western mind struggles with discipline.
Yeah, because I have done one of my first ever yoga classes was an Ashtanga class, and I was very stiff and it was hard. Like it was there was a routine of exercises and everyone knew the routine, and then they'd do their Mysore practice in the morning, and we were in Shavasana for a long time, and yeah, like Shavasana just would end when you wanted it to end. Like there was no like rounding up Shavasana.
Yeah, I love that about
Ashtanga.
Well,
I think there's Ashtanga.
wasn't Ashtanga used for the military training mainly?
I did hear something about that, but I'm not.
He was telling me, yeah, because
Ashtanga, but then also maybe Iyengar was. I'm not sure if that's just a myth or not, but potentially. Iyengar is definitely. Ashtanga as well. Both of those traditions, Iyengar and Ashtanga, they can be, from the traditional perspective, quite militaristic in their discipline. When I did my training in India, when I went to Rishikesh 23 or 24 years ago now, I think. Yeah, 24 years ago when I went to India and went to Rishikesh, and this is before the advent of teacher training, really. I mean, maybe there was 1 or 2 teacher training courses there, I don't know. But it wasn't the thing you went to do. You just went and found a good teacher and studied with them for a while. So that's what I did. I went and found a teacher called Rudradev, who was one of Iyengar's main teachers, and he'd become very revered. So I went and studied with him in Rishikesh, and you'd go to his asana class, and you'd be there at 5 in the morning or whatever it was, and he's like, everyone, Tadasana, and then he'd have his little, he'd have a stick, and he'd into Trikonasana. Okay, Trikonasana. Oh, quickly into Trikonasana, and then he'd go around with the stick, and he'd whip you. Buttocks in! And you'd be like, oh shit. You'd actually get whipped into place, and that's how full on it was. And most Westerners who would come, they'd last a class or 2 if they're lucky, and they'd be running away with their tail between their legs going, this isn't yoga.
You can't get 40 guys in the military to stand still like that. I'm telling you.
Well, I know, that's probably why you need that.
You have at 5 o'clock. What days is it? Tuesdays. I feel like I'm in a military camp. We'll get up on it. Especially the way he does it. I love it.
Yeah.
But that's
that's what everyone needs in their life.
That's the traditional sort of discipline way that it was presented in India, and it still is to some degree. Which for most of us Westerners, it's like, well, what the fuck, like, no, I don't resonate with that. But I mean, I'm grateful. I stuck it out, and I stayed for the whole month.
Did you cop the stick?
Cop the stick a few times, but actually it was amazing because I learned so much with him. He was actually a really incredible teacher. As much as his discipline was a bit intense, but yeah, in the end I was like, really super grateful that I stuck it out because really learned a lot. Anyway, we're still talking about Hatha. There was one more stream to go.
But, I'll give everyone else.
Sorry?
I'll give everyone else a chance to answer.
Anyone else there?
So, Jnana yoga?
Jnana yoga, thank you. Well done, Ali. Jnana yoga, any ideas?
Never.
Anyone heard of that one? No, the least known one maybe. Interesting. The least known one, but if you ask me right now on my journey, it's actually the one that is most important to me right now, personally, on my yoga journey. Ali, can you tell me what it's about?
Yep. So it's the yoga of knowing. And so in my notes I've got it come from the Brahmins, the scriptures, wisdom, and it's one of the most ancient forms to my knowledge. That's left, Mickey.
Yes, brilliantly put. Thank you, Ali. Yes. So it's the yoga of knowledge. It's the yoga of understanding and intellectualizing to some degree the teachings. And so it is the teachings themselves. And so it is the yoga of reading the Yoga Sutras, of reading the Upanishads, but not just reading them, but understanding the wisdom within these ancient texts. And like you said, it's potentially the oldest one because some of these texts are actually really ancient. They come from, you touched upon it before, they come from maybe 5,000 years ago, or was it 5,000 BC, which would make it 7,000 years ago. Anyway, we'll leave it there. We'll have a little lunch break.
Can I tell you one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
So in Kabbalah, which is like Jewish mysticism, the Old Testament talks about Abraham. He was like the founder of Judaism, but he had 4 sons, and 2 of them had his powers. This is like from Kabbalah texts, which is like the 10 Commandments. So 2 of his sons went on to found Judaism, but 2 of them didn't hold the powers that Abraham had in terms of connecting within to consciousness, and so they were Brahma and Vishnu, and so Brahma and Vishnu are actually Abraham's sons that went on to found Hinduism and start the religion of Islam and Hinduism. So it actually dates back to Judaism, and not many people know that because it's Kabbalah, and you can only study Kabbalah when you're 40 in Judaism because it's so mystical. But yeah, I've read like a couple of books.
Wow.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool because now the Islams and Jews are so against each other, but in reality they're actually the same. They come from the same. They're brothers. That's why the kosher in like the Islams don't eat pork, and we have kosher in Judaism. So it's very similar.
Well, you're actually stricter.
Yeah.
More closer to the yogic philosophy, more so concentrated on getting the heart space clear, organic food. It says it all in all the books.
Yeah,
it says it in
it's all the same.
all the books. Yeah, it's all the same stuff reinterpreted. Even the mystical gods, they're all the same people. And Sufis and Kabbalism, both the same thing, really.
It's just the mystical side.
Yeah, now we're all here to learn it. Practice it, Harry Potter. There's my dinner.
That's right. We're all here to gain those magical powers. So let's
I swear to God, I pressed the traffic light and the light went on and someone's going magic and I'm thinking, well, I'll do that